Hidden in the depths of the mind is a secret tomb where knowledge, fear, mystery, and a macabre sense of enjoyment is held. Each corner is resplendent with its own curiosities, and each curiosity appeals to a different soul. You're listening to The Crypt of the Unknown, a podcast that discusses the realms of the horrific and the fantastic in print, games, or on the screen. And now, introducing you to the Guardians of the Crypt, your tour guides. Here are Webb and Stefan J.D. Greetings, weary travelers, to the Crypt of the Unknown, a podcast that discusses the horrific and the fantastic in all forms of media. I am Webb, the critical android, and joining me here in the tomb, it's not really a beetle, and I don't really want to describe him as juicy, but it's Stefan J.D.
Hey! How am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. You know, at this point, right now, I would eat anything you wanted me to eat, drink anything you'd wanted me to drink. I'd even come on down and chew on the dog. But, you know, I'm doing pretty good, so I'm kind of in that mood.
Well, I can understand why, because it's showtime, and we've got an episode that you may already have been able to guess from the pretty blatant references that we've just tossed out there. Today we're discussing Beetlejuice.
Dale, Dale. Daylight come and me one go podcast.
Yes, and indeed that's what we're doing here as we discuss 1988's Beetlejuice, directed by Tim Burton, which, if anybody has seen the movie, and hopefully you have seen it before listening to this, otherwise you're doing things the wrong way in life. But still, you could feasibly be listening to this first. But yeah, it's a very, very typical Tim Burton style with that gothic element, in this case, gothic horror. And there's a lot to break down in this. So before we get into discussing the movie, Stefan, you had recommended that we do this. So what does Beetlejuice mean to you? And what was your history with this film?
So this is really weird because I still think that a lot of people haven't seen this movie. As renowned and as loved as it is by everyone, I don't think a lot of people have. Even when I had a stepsister, my dad was married to my stepmom. I asked her, she's like, what are you? Because it was Halloween. I was dressed as Beetlejuice. I'm like, I'm Beetlejuice. She's like, what's that? And I turned to my dad and my stepmom, I'm like, what are you feeding this kid? Like, it's one of the best movies in the world. So, you know, I think for me, growing up, it was just bonkers. Like, this movie to me was bonkers as a kid. I was like, this is the weirdest movie I've ever seen. Of course, I loved it. And now that I know more about it, I think we actually got the more tame version. Because originally, this movie was supposed to be way just, out there. Like, it was supposed to be dark. Beetlejuice was going to rape the female character, Lydia. Lydia had a sister. I mean, there was just a whole smattering of other things that they were going to include in this movie. But Beetlejuice, to me, is just Michael Keaton having fun. Tim Burton probably having fun. Everyone having fun. This movie is fun. What about you, Webb?
My experience with the film is far more limited than yours, because this was, obviously, as you mentioned, part of your childhood to you. For me, my history of Beetlejuice starts back with the cartoon series that was on Saturday mornings for years. Ran for about 4 seasons. And to its credit, also had a Danny Elfman arranged version of the theme song for it. So, to me, that was the thing that stuck out the most, was that wonderful, wonderful theme, which even in the film version, also, fantastic. But it's Danny Elfman, so of course it's going to be. But yeah. I was not a big fan of the cartoon. It kind of just, I found it more annoying and not funny. So, for me, Beetlejuice was something that I just never really wanted to watch. And eventually, I did get around to watching the film. I can't remember when it was. I think, I want to say I first saw it maybe back in college. My first experience with watching any of the film was when it was being run on like HBO, and I caught the very end with Lydia dancing to Jump in the Line. And I didn't really think much of the film at the point, because it's like, okay, well, I don't know what to make of it from the from the end scene here. It was certainly interesting. And then going back to watch it, and I guess I was surprised that despite being called Beetlejuice, it's not really about Beetlejuice so much as it is about the characters who we get introduced here, and we'll talk about them more in a moment here, but that was the thing that surprised me, was that it was not as much about Beetlejuice as I would have thought. And I eventually went back into the movie later and finding it to be, I guess I had some qualms with it, but also loved its sense of imagination. Like, to me, this is one of the most imaginative movies that's ever been put to screen, with the lore that it builds up in itself with a pretty short runtime of over only an hour and a half. And you get a really good sense of what this world is like, and the effects, which some of which are dated by today, but even if they're dated, they still work so well with this environment. Like, everything looks like this is exactly how it should look. From the makeup effects to the stop motion, all of it looks amazing for this world. And I think if you were trying to update it today with CGI, it just would not work.
Yeah, oh my God. I think even the makeup special effects artist said out loud to an audience when he was being interviewed, he's like, it was meant to look this way. We wanted it to look this way because, yes, that's how the aesthetic of the film present it, and it should be presented that way because it should feel like inorganic, like you're in on the joke too, or you're part of the experience, and it's not meant to specifically even frighten you. So yeah, you're not wrong in that. I'll even agree on the cartoon that was not my favorite either. Lydia, whatever. the guy who voiced Beetlejuice, I was not into him. He was not a Michael Keaton. It was a little too exaggerated for me, but yeah, I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to say that's blasphemy, but I did like the animation. But yeah, I'll agree with you on all of those things. This film should look that way. The cartoon wasn't as good as the film. I actually own every season of it, and yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and when it comes to the film itself, well, we can discuss the merits of it in terms of personal opinion, because when it comes to comedy, obviously people's take on things is going to be very different, but there's no denying, watching this film, that it is a wonderfully stunning work of imagination brought to life, and that's the thing that really, it just exudes. It exudes a personality that is very unique unto itself, and part of that comes from the way that this is all set up. So, and just go into it. As I mentioned, the main character is not Beetlejuice, as portrayed by Michael Keaton. The main characters are actually the Maitlands, Adam and Barbara Maitland, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis.
Well, you got to say it as in like the Maitlands, but look like a bunch of losers too. What does he say? A bunch of saps.
Yeah, it's like, I probably don't know anything.
Yeah.
Here are two protagonists who, well, here's the thing that's awesome. Before we get into them, I want to note this. One of the things I really enjoy about this film is that no one in this story is entirely like evil or bad. There's people who just have their very own strong motivations, but none of them are necessarily with evil intent, I guess you could say, in my opinion.
No, I agree. The comedy is very played up. A story I was actually writing myself, this has to do with it, but I was writing a story where this, like every other horror movie, the teenagers show up at the haunted mansion, there's monsters, but it turns out that the teenagers came to kick their ass, and, it plays on it rewinds the trope and plays a new way of going about that, which is how this movie plays out as well. The Maitlands are trying to scare the people, but it doesn't work. So it's flip-flopping on your expectations. And not only that, but like Tim Burton's subtlety of the way he does things it helps propel that into what is now a classic movie. So everything about that, like the comedy and what's supposed to be the quote-unquote horror, actually is a flip-flop of the tropes, and it works. It somehow works. And you bringing up Beetlejuice only being in this every so often, it's like Ghostbusters as well. Like, they only use their proton packs like 2 whole minutes out of that movie. Beetlejuice is in this movie for 18 whole minutes out of almost 90 minutes. So it's crazy how the 80s were able to get away with that type of filmmaking.
Yeah, and it helps, though, that the premise of this film is confusing but relatable because we're following the Maitlands through this and learning as they are, to where they have this kind of idyllic little life. They have a really gaudy designed house, but it suits their wants. It's whatever they want. And they're just preparing for a vacation, and they're getting ready to go out on a drive, and wouldn't you know it, gosh darn, they die.
I was going to say, I like the subtle placement of the fact that the neighbor and the designer of their home keeps coming up and saying, this really is a home for a family, and you guys are just both of you. It's too big for you. Let me help you sell it. And it's like, wow, what a nice thing to say. But at the same time, they're kind of okay with it. And when they're driving into town and coming back before their death, they're like, we should try again. Let's go on vacation. So it's a weird thing because it's tragic, but it's also funny to them. So it's got to be funny to you, although you can feel the tragedy of it.
Well, the thing that kind of helps set the tone is at first when Adam is running into, he has to make a quick stop to buy something, and there's the guy sitting on the outside of the store, and he's starting to talk to him, and Adam knows he has to hurry. So it's like, this one guy came over one day, and I was shining his shoes, and he started talking on, and he continues the conversation. And it's like, now I cut his hair, and it's a little off the top. The way that you kind of make it. You just want to take a little bit off, and he's still talking about what he was doing, cutting this guy's hair, not realizing that Adam is nowhere near him, runs back out, and so we get a comedic tone set through that. But then we also get the death of these characters, where there was a little foreshadowing. There was a dog that was out in the street, and they make a sharp turn to avoid the dog, which has them go through part of a covered bridge to where the car is sticking out horizontally off the side of the bridge, busting through the wall. And it's like being suspended there by one board. One board has it in place, which, don't you know it, the dog somehow managed to get onto that board, and it's the one keeping it there. And as soon as that darn dog stops off, they plunge 5 feet into water and die.
It really is 5 feet too, because there's a behind the scenes account of it, how they had to keep pumping water into that goddamn little ravine or river or whatever underneath the bridge, and it's hilarious. But you're like you said, the comedic portion of it, the dog sitting on the last little 2x4 to hold the car up and steps off. That's very Bugs Bunny comedy.
Very Bugs Bunny. And to the credit here, this is one of those tough things where you have to find a balance between, do you really want to brutally kill off your characters and create a much different tone? But at the same time, this is where it's really effective. Ideally, this crash should not have killed them. It should have been pretty easy to just take off your seatbelt and get out of that car. But panic and things can set in like that and cause things to happen. But it was a minor enough crash, even though it was into water. It was minor enough to where you could believe that they could live through that easily. Which is why when they come in soaking wet back into their home, we get the idea of, okay, they lived. This is just a really bad day for them. But then, of course, we find out, this might be a spoiler alert. I don't know if I should say this early in the podcast, but Stefan, they're dead.
Oh my God! Really?
I that's why I didn't want to say anything, but they died in that crash. They're both dead.
Jesus. I wonder what gives that away.
Well, why don't you say? Because, I mean, I know what gave it away, but what gave it away to you?
So as a child, this was kind of hard to understand the first time around, because it happens twice. But they try to exit their home, where they live. They're immediately transported to Saturn. And Saturn, the way it looks, the aesthetic, it's so good. Saturn, there's these things called sandworms.
Like the kind from Dune?
Yeah, exactly. But prettier.
Multicolored.
Yeah, multicolored, Tim Burton-esque. They don't look like giant penises. But uncircumcised. I'm sorry, I'm going to move on. Yeah, so giant sandworms. They have to fight their way back into their house, and there's this door that's just the gateway, basically. Gina Davis's character reveals that Adam has been gone 2 hours, and to him it seemed like 2 seconds. So they kind of figure out that they're kind of trapped in their home as ghosts, which they are.
Yeah, that's intense.
But it's that aesthetic of the sandworm. I don't know about you, but that's just one hell of a cool looking creature and design and character in the story.
Oh yeah, the entire look of Saturn in general just kind of radiates in a resplendent fashion the style of Tim Burton in general. Like you see that, and I think, yep, that's Tim Burton.
Yeah. Actually, those whole colors in Saturn remind me of Mars Attacks a little.
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, they get back to their home and they kind of realize, oh my God, are we dead? What happened, Adam? We're dead. And then Adam somehow finds this thing called the Book for the Dead, the recently deceased.
Yeah, the Handbook for the recently deceased.
Yep. And he starts reading it, and he says, it reads like, what was it, VCR instructions? Or...
Yes, a VCR instruction manual.
Yeah, which is hilarious. Just those little subtle things. I don't know why I laugh at that, because I used to, as I'm sure you did too, Webb, but when we were growing up reading VCR instructions, it was very unclear what they were saying.
Oh yeah, manuals like that tend to be terrible. Even today, like some instruction manuals just do not help you at all in terms of trying to understand something.
Every time I put something together for my nieces, like a little thing they can play on, I am always left over with at least 8 screws, and I'm thinking, but it's holding together. It's going to be fine. It's good.
I just have a question. How do you feel about those sandworms, though?
Oh, God.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I hate sandworms. You hate sandworms.
Whoa. Sandworms.
We got a lot of comments, what I'm saying.
And this is like, I don't know, what would you say, like 25 minutes into the movie, and we still haven't seen a lick of our main character?
Yeah, and that's going to be a recurring trend. And possibly why the character is so beloved despite that, because he's not overused.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we're going to find out, this is actually, it's really helpful in how they do finally get some information about what's going on here. Because they have to, they look through the handbook for the recently deceased, and they find out that if they draw a door, the door can actually take them to another place, and they're going to have to explore that, as with everything that's going on, that sales lady, that real estate agent or family friend, whoever the hell she is, did not wait long. Like, the Maitlands are barely in the grave before she sells that house to the Dietzes.
When they go through the afterlife, which is just a beautiful way of expressing the afterlife, very, I think a character later on even says, you know, if you commit suicide, you end up becoming a civil servant in the afterlife. And we get to meet some of those civil servants in the afterlife. One of them, when they go up to the door window to figure out their appointment, she's like, if I only knew then what I knew now. And she shows her wrist, obviously killed herself. She does become a civil servant, which, you know, the whole thing, like little subtle things that people say always tie into what's happening into the movie. Adam saying the instructions are hard to read, a character later says that.
Yep, Charles says that later on when he gets a hold of the handbook for the recently deceased. And there's even a comment that Otho makes during the seance that accidentally turns into an exorcism, where he says, everybody knows if you commit suicide, you become a civil servant in the afterlife.
So it all ties back together. The idea of having to see Beetlejuice's name 3 times. They go to the afterlife 3 times. They summon Beetlejuice 3 times. Just all these things in threes, which kind of is the note for when they finally do get the little ad for Beetlejuice, because they attempt, well, let's back it up a little bit. They attempt to scare the people that take over their house, the Dietzes.
Right. But before we get to like the actual scare attempt, one of the reasons why they need to scare them off is that, first of all, they're very attached to their home, and they realize that as ghosts, they're stuck there. So this is the home that they're going to have to be in. And Adam, in particular, is very protective of the attic.
Yes, it's where he's spent most of his time. He's built his model of the town. He loves the town. He loves his home. So it makes a lot of sense why he would. I'm trying to think. In the afterlife, though, one of the things they do figure out is that they're kind of on their own. The handbook, while they have it isn't really going to help them. So they got to go and scare the Dietzes themselves, which they attempt to do. And in the 1980s, early 1990s, this would have been a more funny trope, I think, than today, is where they put on bed sheets, cut holes, and try to woo as ghosts.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. Also, they can't be seen by the Dietzes, which is kind of part of the problem in some cases, because as Otho, designer, Delia, and they're going through and they're trying to pick apart the house, what they're going to redesign and everything, and they open up a closet and they go, ah! And it's Gina Davis's character pulling off her face, and they remark, they're like, well, let's hope some of the other closets in the house are bigger than this one.
Yes. Leave it to Catherine O'Hara, who some people might recognize from so many other things that she's done. She was the mom in Home Alone. She was SCTV for years. She's been on the show Schitt's Creek. And she's also appeared in some Christopher Guest films as well. She's a very talented and funny comedian and actress. Wonderfully, wonderfully talented. And having her in this movie, she's also just fantastic here.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the underlying tones with her character is that she's always trying to be very artsy and show that she's an artist. But apparently her agent has been losing money on her art for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And if you pay attention to the things she's wearing in the movies, like Charles wears a red sweater at one point. And then later on, like 5 minutes later, she's wearing it as a gown. She just simply turned it into like a cooking gown. And then Lydia's wearing gloves, and later on she's wearing it as a hat. Like, she's just trying to find things to turn into art, which I think was Tim Burton's subtle way of, you can't make yourself unique by just taking things apart. You just are who you are, maybe?
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah, so there's that underlying message, which is just, it's hilarious if people catch it.
But yeah, they're trying to just get them out of there because they really don't want them messing with the house. But unfortunately for them, they run into an issue where they don't know what they're doing, and they have to go through that door to the afterlife. And it takes a while to get an appointment. Like, it takes a while. The bureaucracy of the afterlife is pretty astoundingly bad.
It's like going to the DMV, basically.
Yeah, and this is even worse. And they end up speaking and finding their case manager, Juno, who's played by Sylvia Sidney, who this is not the first, or I should say this is not the last time she'll appear in a Tim Burton movie, because she also appeared as a grandmother in Mars Attacks.
Oh, yeah, that's right. With the headphones on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she's pretty awesome in that movie, too. Unfortunately, she passed away shortly after filming Mars Attacks. I mean, Mars Attacks was in 96, and she passed away in, I think, 98. 99 she passed away. But at the ripe old age of 88. So here, let's see, I mean, this is happening in 88, so she was a good 77 years old, and just nailing it. She's fantastic in her role.
Oh, hell yeah. I like the part where they asked, like, well, God, this sucks. And she's like, what'd you expect? You're dead.
She nails every line with that dry, deadpan delivery. But at the same time, she's not uncaring. Like, she does have, like, concern for what they're going to do. But she's also concerned about the fact that they've been seeing some advertisements for a bioexorcist.
Mm-hmm. And they have trouble pronouncing the name. They're like, Beetlejuice? Beetlejuice?
Yeah, that's a fun running gag with Adam's character, is that he can't pronounce things properly at all. As a matter of fact, he looks at the Handbook for the Recently Deceased, honey.
The term bioexorcist is, I feel like it's a made-up term, right? It's not a real thing.
I do not think that is a real thing.
Yeah, but basically, Beetlejuice is supposed to be summoned to get the Dietzes out of their home, which is the whole point of their adventure, is they just want to be left alone as tired old ghosts in the dead. And when they summon Beetlejuice, they get transported and minimized down to the model in the attic that Adam built. And they see the grave that Adam never put there, and it says Beetlejuice on it. And he says, well, our Gene Davis character is like, well, what do we do? And the shovels fall over, and Adam's like, we dig. Which is a nice way of bringing in the character rather than him just showing up.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, and Beetlejuice's motivation, mind you, is perfectly sound. He's just kind of a con man, but a professional con man, I guess you could say. He's not completely honest with what he does, but he's very good at what he does. And he just wants to make money. He just wants to succeed in what he's doing. He's just a very avid entrepreneur, is what he essentially is. Mm-hmm. And when he sees an opportunity, he's going to seize on it, which is exactly what he's trying to do. And in his defense, if the afterlife, Juno included, had done a better job of trying to let people know what to do in the afterlife and how things work, they wouldn't have needed to turn to Beetlejuice.
Yeah, it really is that way. And she even expresses the fact that she's worked with him before. I think it might have been a student of her or something, but she says, yeah, don't summon him. He's the worst, He really is. But when he shows up, the thing about Beetlejuice I love the most is that nothing is taboo to him. If he wants to do something, he's going to do it. If he wants to fondle your girlfriend, he's going to fondle her. If he wants to change clothes and pretend like you're closer together because of that, he's going to do it. If he wants to use a Zagnut bar to get a fly to come down and eat it, he'll do it.
Giant Zagnut bar.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. I think the introduction to Beetlejuice was good. I feel bad for Michael Keaton because I know, and it had to have been worse than flying out of the grave as Beetlejuice after they dig him up. And he's on those strings, those like wired strings we know they use for actors to fly around.
Right.
God, those things had to have been awful. Those harnesses.
Especially back in the day. Not to mention, not only had to go through that, but the amount of makeup they would have had to use with things back in the day, too. So he would have had to spend quite a few hours in makeup and then more time on those wires, which would be terribly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just flying around.
Yeah, it's... He gave a lot for this role, but apparently, from what I understand, he absolutely loves the character.
Yeah, I think it's one of his better characters. I don't know. He doesn't have like a whole lot, but the ones he does, fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, he was allowed to improvise. Most of the dialogue that we hear from Beetlejuice was ad-libbed by Keaton.
Mm-hmm. Even the outfit was picked out by him.
Which goes to show how much... If you give him a character and give him a chance to embrace that character, he's going to do it. And this man does not give a bad performance ever.
No, never.
That's why he's one of my top 10 favorite male actors of all time.
No, I agree. I think it should be pretty obvious. We just did Batman 89 and now we're doing Beetlejuice. Which actually, funny enough, both Tim Burton movies, I don't think we planned any of that.
We didn't.
No, for any reason other than it's just like, oh, hey, it's October, Beetlejuice.
But it just, for me, it's fantastic being able to see an actor as versatile as Keaton is, where he's playing this just downright loathsome pervert of a ghost. And owning it so well and making him charming in his own way, just with those lines like, not the ghost with the most, baby. And it's just that nonchalant way of saying, it's showtime. And it's just going right into it. He embraces it so much, and it's hard not to find his character alluring despite the fact that it's a completely gross and disgusting, intentionally so character.
There's something super raunchy about him. Even when he meets the Maitlands, he's fondling Gina Davis' character, and oh man, he's trying to relate to Adam, and he's changing clothes. He's like, simpatico, we even dress alike. And it just doesn't work at all. And they really get the sense like, okay, we made a bad mistake here. And again, the random course of threes, she says, home, home, home. And they get back out of the model and transported back to where they were, which is kind of nice.
A good way of getting out of it, though, this does leave Beetlejuice feeling dejected. So he's not planning on giving up with any of this.
Yeah. Nice fucking model. You bunch of losers.
F-bomb in there. Which, again, had to be ad-libbed. Well, it's remarkable what they get away with, because this movie is, like we said, it's raunchy. There's some things in here that are surprisingly adult. but we still get them in here, and it's pretty fantastic how, I guess it's like how some songs, like on the radio, will still get a pass even though they drop like a swear word in them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the same way for Beetlejuice, I guess, in that sense. Though I think, in fairness, it was rated PG.
Oh, PG.
I think it was rated PG, which at the time, the PG-13... Yeah, it was rated PG, but the PG-13 rating was not really, like, there at the time. Today, in PG-13, I think, to qualify for it, you can drop the F-bomb once. If you say it more than once, your movie instantly will jump up to an R rating.
Yeah. And I think that happened in around the same time, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They say "damn" like at least 5 times in that movie, or something ridiculous.
It's the first word that's uttered by a Ninja Turtle. Raphael saying "damn."
Yeah. So I mean, it was a different time. Obviously, they weren't. It's like the Comics Code Authority or anything. It's like it got really strict all of a sudden, or they just didn't know what they were doing yet, and then they figured it out later. So it's one of those things.
Now, when it comes to Beetlejuice, though, again, his character, he's very motivated and very much wants to do what he has to do. But, again, if the Maitlands had been better instructed on what to do, then we would have had a easier situation for them where they wouldn't need to turn to Beetlejuice to have to go things, because Beetlejuice also has no regard for human life for the most part.
Mm-hmm. I actually have a quick question. When you first saw this first scene of Beetlejuice and, you were getting into the character and finally getting to meet him, was this the point in the movie that kind of got your interest? Like, were you already into it beforehand, or did it take Beetlejuice showing up to get you in? Was it kind of a movie where you felt like only when Beetlejuice is around I'm most excited? Because I know I kind of felt that way with The Dark Knight when Joker showed up. Those were my favorite bits. That was the reason why I still enjoy that movie. It's mostly that character. I'm curious if that was the same thing with Beetlejuice for you.
The thing with this is how I respect everything that the movie does, from the imagination, from the art direction, from the makeup. Like, everything about the movie I respect. But the parts that I only truly, love tend to be some of the bigger scenes, one of which we'll get to, which is a cinema classic. And also anything that has Beetlejuice in it, because there's something about the character, and specifically Keaton, and the idea that You've matched an actor with a character that are both willing to do anything. Keaton can be unpredictably zany when he wants to be, which perfectly fits with Beetlejuice. So those are the only scenes in here that I absolutely love. The rest of it is just things that I enjoy out of an aesthetic purpose, but not necessarily something that keeps me coming back to the movie. Beetlejuice is what keeps me coming back to it. And that's why, one of my only complaints about the film is that there's just not enough of him, because I know he's chewing up the scenery. I'm glad they don't overuse him, but I do think he is underutilized. There had to be a way to get more of him in there, but I guess it's better to leave people wanting more than overdoing it. But I think they could have easily had put another 15 minutes of his character in there at least.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like the thing with even other Tim Burton movies, like Batman Returns, for instance. I think Batman's in that movie for how long he is, like 15 minutes or something. But it's very much based on other characters, and that can be a common complaint for movies where the title character doesn't show up enough. I mean, certainly in this movie that could be the case for some people. For me, yeah, maybe one more scene or two with Beetlejuice would have been nice.
And the other thing that I think could have been used a bit more, and we get touches of it, but one of the things we haven't noted is that the only character who can see the Maitlands is Lydia, the Dietz's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to form a bond with them. And I would have liked to have seen that bond grow more, because I think it almost happens a bit too quickly. It feels natural to an extent. I mean, you can see why she has this like for them, and how they like her specifically more on their end, because, they wanted to have a kid. And they're never going to get that opportunity. But at the very least, they get to, see Lydia as the kind of their child. And Lydia's already not adapting well between, whoever her real mother is. Since we don't find out about, her past family, we just know that she's, got a stepmom. it's not easy for her. She's not coping with it all very well, and that's downplayed. That's one of the other qualms I'll have, is that she's suicidal to an extent, and suicide in this case is not a very funny subject. I mean, suicide is painless. It brings on many changes, and I can take or leave it if I please. There's a MASH reference for people who are listening. 'Cause suicide is painless. It brings on many changes, and I can take or leave it if I please. Nothing? Anybody seen from MASH? Theme from MASH, anybody?
I still haven't watched MASH, I'm sorry.
That's fine. It was funny, though, side note, the man who directed that movie, Robert Altman, his son wrote the theme for the movie and for the show. And he was later complaining, it's like, yeah, my son got more goddamn money for writing the theme song than I got for directing the film, because it was used in syndication for the show. Which makes sense. It's kind of funny how things work like that. But yeah, Lydia, she's a suicidal girl who that feature is downplayed. So the idea that she wants to kill herself to be in the afterlife, it comes on kind of quickly at some point in time. But the Maitlands are there to, kind of tell her that no, life is worth living, and this is not the place that you want to be when you have the potential for so much else. And she does like and respect them, which is partially why when we get to the end of the film, it has a strong kind of happy resonance to it for what happens. And that's one of the things I really like about it, is this tragic story of a couple who dies before they can ever have a kid together ultimately ends up having a happy ending when we get to it. It's not something you see all the time in tragic comedy. There's even Pixar movies that have characters like die off and they, nothing good comes of it. But this one has a kind of happiness between life and death, and that's something I totally respect about it.
I think Lydia, as a character too, given back to the time when it was the 1980s, and this was the new wave was coming out, but ultimately it would be kind of somewhat related to the goth aesthetic. Yes. And Lydia certainly helped propel that. She's obviously very goth. She's lonely. She sits in her room that's very dark. She doesn't relate to anybody around her. She wants to die. Between Lydia and Wednesday Addams from the Addams Family, those two are like the biggest goth icons for people our age. Oh my God, yes. Exactly. And it would be Wednesday, Lydia, Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Oh, yeah. And Robert Smith from The Cure. So 3 fictional characters. Wait, don't you mean 4? I've never seen him. Okay, so... yeah, okay, so 4 fictional characters, assuming Robert Smith actually doesn't exist, which he may not. But yeah, I mean, they're the biggest goth icons, like I said, for at least for our generation. Like, more than Bauhaus. Like, nobody, ask somebody today who pick the goth icon and list off Lydia or Peter Murphy, and nobody's gonna say Peter Murphy unless they're a huge Bauhaus fan. Yeah, that would be. I've actually never heard that before, like something like Lydia or Wednesday or even The Cure. So I want to say that it wasn't even solidified even in the 80s. So this is kind of like that beginning of what would goth be. Even when the Crow comic book came out, people weren't ready for that either. It's just one of those things that later on picked up on. It got more popular. Now it's a thing. Then it was parodied. Now it's a thing again. It doesn't matter. It's just that the idea of, in this story, in the context of the time, it didn't have that name yet. And Lydia is an original character for it because she really can't relate to anybody. And even in her suicide and wanting to be with the Maitlands and them coming back from the dead and coming back from the afterlife, even to tell her, no, you shouldn't do this. That's not how it works. It still sucks being dead. It changes nothing, which is a powerful message. Very powerful. Yeah. And even in the Beetlejuice musical, which I listened to this week, there's an actual anti-suicide song in that too, which has to do with the civil servant who takes their meeting when she has the slit wrist, and she says, if I knew then what I knew now, which is the whole point of that line. You're not going to kill yourself and life's gonna get better or it gets worse, because you're dead.
What was the name of the song? Actually, yes, you should fear the Reaper.
It was the line.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that would be a good title too. Yes, please fear the Reaper.
It's like, actually fear the Reaper. That was the B-side that Blue Oyster Cult never released.
Yeah, my favorite B-side. I'm so glad I picked that up.
Oh, they just changed the lyrics. Actually fear the Reaper and the wind, the sun, and the rain. The weather is scary. Come on, baby. Yeah, it's really scary.
We can be like they are.
Sunburns really hurt.
Civil servants.
You don't want that daily grind. Actually fear the Reaper.
Fucking sucks. Solo.
Oh, that's how they wrote it.
I remember. That was a good hit.
You can catch that music video coming out on MTV3 later on this year.
Unreleased tracks, MTV3.
For music that doesn't exist, which is why you can't find it on your local cable or satellite affiliate.
Oh, man. Yeah, anyway.
Speaking of music, though, segueing into something, because obviously we've established Lydia can see the Maitlands, and they want the family out, though they do like Lydia. So they decide they have to up their gamesmanship, because Lydia's really critical of them. Like, she's saying, like, you're not going to scare them like this. So they know that the Maitlands are going to be having a party. And at that party is going to be celebrities, which is kind of funny. They're not actually celebrities like the characters, but they have celebrities playing them. One of them is freaking Robert Goulet.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is former TV show host Dick Cavett.
Yeah, which his deliveries are actually pretty freaking spot on. I actually enjoyed the hell out of his performance.
Oh yeah, Dick Cavett has an incredibly sharp wit. As a TV show host, he was amazing. Absolutely brilliant. One of the better TV show hosts that you'd ever see. And in this, his delivery is still spot on. And he gets involved in possibly the most ludicrous scene in one of my, probably, if you were to say, make a list of like the top 100 most iconic scenes in film history. But just like a scene, like a 2-minute segment of film. Like one of the things that comes to my mind is the piano segment in Big.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Chopsticks.
Yep, that whole scene is one of the most iconic scenes in film history to me. Like if I think scenes that I can instantly identify a movie with, that's one of them. And there's probably others I could think of off the top of my head, like the Death Star trench run is a big one from Star Wars. But another huge one is the Deo scene at the dinner that we get as the Maitlands try to go all out in scaring the Dietzes out of the home along with their guests.
Yeah, and this is another trope of the 80s films where it's not explained how they're doing this. I mean, they just start to move them around. It's almost... the way I pictured it, it's kind of like a Mario Brothers thing with the Goombas where they just start shaking them and they start dancing.
that Goomba scene does not go in the top 100, but I do freaking love that scene. It's the best part of the film.
It really is.
They just get the Goombas moving back and forth to the music. It's so funny.
Yeah, I think they just did that. They start moving them around. They start moving their lips, and they start flopping around, and then they just use their spiritual juice to get it going. But the group starts dancing at the table scene. They start doing the Deo song by Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte, yeah, and it's a great song. It's a great scene. I don't think anything having to do with the dance number just out of nowhere in a movie could top it. I've never actually seen one try to attempt to top this in any way.
Yeah, and again, this is a thing where it's not going for belly laughs. I mean, is it a funny scene? Yes, but it's more funny and it's an imagination and how just ridiculously clever it is.
Yeah. The Deo. Black tarantula.
And give it again credit to Catherine O'Hara here, who plays Delia, who just nails the lip syncing.
Oh my god. And even after watching the behind the scenes, it honestly looks like they're just having so much fun doing this, which I mean, god, credit to them. It just looks fun. It looks like something that if I was ever going to get spooked by some spookster, go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Unfortunately, I mean, you say that, and that's exactly the problem that this movie has in terms of what the characters are going through. Because,
Right.
yeah, you just described the situation that they find themselves in, where nobody was scared by that, even though the shrimp cocktail thing and the hands grabbing them was really clever, and actually the scary part of it, ending with that note. But yeah, they ultimately find the entire scenario to be so fun that now not only do they all believe in ghosts, but they want more interactions with ghosts.
And this whole time, Lydia's been trying to talk about the fact that there are ghosts, and they're like, ghost, 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 Lydia. It's just a little joke we have on the side. But now they believe it, and not only do they believe it and love it, but now they want Lydia to get the ghost, the Maitlands, to come down and do a show for them, which is going to gain them some net income, apparently.
Yeah, and this does not sit well with anybody, because not only do we have the problem of what's happening with the Dietzes trying to, or I should say the Maitlands trying to reclaim their home, but then we have more problem with the fact that ultimately this is going to upset things in the afterlife, because the Maitlands have kind of exposed something that they should not have exposed about how ghosts exist, and they've given people tangible proof of the existence of ghosts, which is a problem.
Yeah, isn't that one of the rules too? They say like don't let the not only not let the living know you're there, but also the living usually doesn't see ghosts anyway, so you're kind of protected by that invisible rule. But now they kind of broke it in a way to where, yeah, the Dietzes are like, well, let's have them for parties.
Yeah, they botched it up, and then to make matters worse, it's because of their botching it and realizing that they did that they have to resort to Beetlejuice, and that creates another problem.
This might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they go up to the attic to try and get the Maitlands to come down. They're unsuccessful, and they get Beetlejuice to antagonize them, and it's showtime. And
What does he do, Stefan?
yeah, and so they apparently experience the edge of the staircase, the railings going from the top to the down to turn into a giant snake with a Beetlejuice head. Funny story behind that. They actually didn't have the Michael Keaton look to it when they first shot that scene, so characters are reacting to nothing. Nothing that's there that's tangible they can look at. So they had to do that in post-shoot, which is kind of an interesting factoid, but also it's a good job that they did performing that without anything. I think even in one of the behind-the-scenes interviews, some of the characters, or actors, I should say, do mention that. They're like, yeah, we don't know what we're looking at, but we have to react to it. It's fun and it's tough.
Yeah, it's not easy having to act against something that's not there, which is why when people have done mocaption acting and just CGI imagery, generally that's why they have a stand-in on set to be able to give somebody to interact off of. But you don't always have that luxury when it comes to special effects, especially back in the day when you need to put the effects in after the fact.
Yeah. So, but it's cool to see Beetlejuice turn into a snake. He, oh man, as a kid, he looked terrifying when he grabs Charles and says, we come for your daughter, Chuck. Stuff like that. I just was like, oh my God, let him go, let him go. And then Lydia finally says, you've gone too far. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Realizing that, it's dangerous, and the Maitlands understand afterwards, too, how dangerous it was, which is why they do not want to summon Beetlejuice again.
And sadly, Lydia's connection to them ends up being a reason that she has to trust him.
Right. Because as we approach the climax of the film, things are getting pretty bad, because again, not that the characters in this are evil, because there's really a lack of evil characters in this. But what it boils down to is that because of everything that they've experienced, the Dietzes, specifically Charles, the father, realizes that with his money and resources and connections, if he wants to buy up this town, he could do it. And he basically wants to turn the entire town into like a ghost-themed theme park, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, it's mentioned at some point when he's talking to his former boss or current boss, even though he's on like a different city, a vacation, or he just bought it to get away from the actual city. He does bring up one little line how Charles used to be a shark in the real estate game, which to me, I've always thought, like, is it now that he's just trying to find something new? He's trying to be a happy person now that he's kind of succeeded in whatever it was he was trying for? Or was Charles, is he still a shark, but he's always been nice about it, and maybe that's what got him through? Like, the character's unclear in that way, but it's nice that it's unclear.
Yeah, because his motivations and his backstory is left for us to decide. And it's good that we don't have him as an outright terrible character, because especially at the end of the film when they're all, getting along, it's good to know that they're all getting along.
Yeah.
What really turns the tide for them is when, Goulet, Maxie Dean, which also sounds like a Batman villain, is close enough to Maxie Zeus. But we get Maxie Dean here, played by Robert Goulet, who's demanding to see these ghosts, and the Maitlands do not want to materialize for them after everything that's happened. They cannot continue to show themselves like this and have the town be ruined. So they've had to try to make an effort to fix things. And they've already talked with Juno again. Juno told them, you got to go and fix this and scare them out yourselves. Let me see your faces. And they come up with these really awesome designs that are just full of gaping maws and giant noses and eyeballs. But ultimately, none of it works. And it comes down to the scene where they have to get proof of the supernatural. So Otho decides that using his experience, quote-unquote experience with the supernatural, he's going to perform a seance to bring them out. And the seance is working, but he doesn't realize that he's actually performing an exorcism, which also ties back to what we've seen before, where there was a door in the hallway of the afterlife, where it's the door for the lost souls, where people are exorcised and they go. It's death beyond death, as they call it.
Yeah, that's basically what's happening to the Maitlands. Beetlejuice just sitting there, he's annoyed. He's in the graveyard of the model, and he's like, you could just summon me if you want, and I'll take care of this, but you gotta do one thing for me. You have to marry me. which is very unclear why he's tied to getting out of being a bioexorcist and why he has to marry Lydia to get out of that.
I don't think he has to. I think he's just fucking with him.
Yeah, that could be a possibility too. Like, he just really wants her, because he does mention that earlier in the movie. Yeah, but either way, it's kind of nice to see her have to go against what she knows is the wrong thing and summon Beetlejuice, who just immediately shows up, and this is the biggest scene for him. What are they called? Where he, there's two things. When he comes out of the model, he has basically a bat sign, which tells the future on top of his head on this aesthetic carousel he's wearing on his head. And it also has a little skeleton that looks like Jack Skellington, also telling the future for Tim Burton. But when he comes out, what's it called? The hammer thing.
Oh, it's like the test your strength mallets.
Yeah.
From the carnival.
Yeah, and the rich people obviously think he's there to put on a show. They've summoned another ghost, and he just throws them right through the ceiling of the roof, to which we have to assume they're dead.
Yes.
Because we never see or hear from them again. But after that, he kind of goes into, what do we got tonight, folks? Attention gamer choppers, all that stuff. And he takes care of the Maitlands and returns them to their normal form. He reverses the change coming out of the book, the scripture. Now he has to marry Lydia, which, Webb, I don't know about you, but this is kind of a bonkers scene. It's not a emotionally powerful scene. It's more played for laughs.
Everything about this at this point is played for laughs. Like, Otho is, all Beetlejuice does to him is put him in a tacky suit because he knows bad fashion is punishment enough for Otho. But I also, before we get to like what Beetlejuice is doing, I have to say that this is a turning point in the movie for the character development, because as everyone's watching the Maitland's bodies deteriorate, realizing that they're performing an exorcism instead of a seance, every single one of them feels awful about what's happening. They, even Otho himself, who just realized he can't stop this from happening now because he doesn't realize what he had done. But nobody feels good about what happened, and they just wish it could stop. So that turning point helps bring these characters to a better place, all of them. And then, here's Beetlejuice looking to marry Lydia, gets his own minister, and decides that he's just going to throw his own voice to mimic Lydia so that they can actually be wed. And it's every trope in the book about bad weddings, like even forgetting the ring. It's like, oh, I forgot the ring. Like, oh, where did I put that thing? It's like digging through his pockets for it.
Telling you she meant nothing to me. Nothing.
He finds the ring is still attached to a finger. So, like I said, it's just every intentionally bad trope about weddings thrown into one scene. And the characters are terrible about being able to repeat Beetlejuice 3 times. Because they decided to do it like Beetlejuice. And they just like, take these extended pauses when they could have just gone Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
But if they did that, we wouldn't have a climax. So,
I think Gina Davis just does a little bit after she says the first Beetlejuice. She's like, kind of looks like she's still coming to, like coming back to life as a ghost. She's like, ugh. And so that was good. And then Adam gets transported to the attic where he gets in the red truck, the little toy car that he somehow drives down 3 stories.
It was a very realistic toy car.
Apparently. AA batteries. And runs into Beetlejuice's leg as he's trying to put the ring on Lydia and get the whole wedding solidified. The architecture of the Living Dead pasture all screams the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Very German aesthetic, very, skewed angles, and it doesn't look right at all. And, Tim Burton, while people can look at that today and be like, oh, that's Tim Burton-like stuff, it's like, no, that happened in Germany in the 1930s, but yeah. Good try. Good try. But yeah, it's interesting that Gina Davis somehow decides to use the worm from Saturn to ride back into the house and take down Beetlejuice. Yeah,
because she did stop it earlier in the movie by accidentally punching one.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, she somehow has managed to tame one, maybe through brute force. But man, she just goes all out with bringing that back through and putting Beetlejuice back where he belongs.
It's great. And then we find out that Beetlejuice isn't dead. I mean, basically it's a happy ending. They could have figured this all out from the beginning if they just talked to each other, but the Maitlands and the Dietzes say hi and they agree to live together finally. And the people of the movie like Beetlejuice so much that they were like, well, what if we do a scene at the end with him somehow to show that he's still alive? Beetlejuice is in the waiting line in the afterlife, and he's got a huge number to wait on. There's this magician's assistant who's cut in half, and the legs, the lower half, that are sitting there on the couch next to him, those are actually Tim Burton's girlfriend's legs, apparently playing that when he touches them.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think it was mostly to give Michael Keaton that extra oomph to be like, yeah, I'm doing something I shouldn't, as Beetlejuice, and touch the director's girlfriend's legs. So, it's an interesting scene, to say the least.
As long as she was okay with it for the sake of the art, then...
Yeah, that'd be weird if she wasn't.
Yeah, that would be kind of that's a little creepy right there, but I can understand, putting the actor into that position, and I would hope that an actress would be, looking at this yeah, that is kind of clever, because it is going to make it feel awkward for him. He is going to have to, get into character to do that. So kind of the stylistic element of it does work when you think about it like that. It's what they call enforced method acting of sorts.
Totally enforced, which I'm glad Tim Burton, even in hindsight, at that early of an age in his career, had that kind of mix of ideas. He's like, you know what? Yeah, this is going to work. And it's going to be weird even for me. I think. I would assume so.
I would hope it would be. If he got his rocks off filming that scene, it's like, yeah, Mike, touch him more.
Yeah.
And Keaton's probably like, I think I touched him enough, man. Move on to the next scene.
Curtains, not showtime. Yeah.
And then we get that great scene where he does try to switch the next in line number with the witch doctor, who does not take kindly to him doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whoa, whoa, wow, wow, wow. This could work for me.
Keaton having just fantastic time with the role. So it's good that we had one more. But the scene with Lydia dancing to jump into line to end things, with the Maitlands making her levitate, and then having all the stuff, and then the Deeses are listening to it and saying, "Oh, Lydia must have gotten an A on her math test," and they're just happy. Obviously, they're all in a better place emotionally, and it's a really fun, not even bittersweet ending, but just a fun, sincere ending to it.
Yeah, even her mom, her stepmom, when she presents the Beetlejuice snake to Charles, she's like, he likes it.
Yeah.
There's this little like magazine or poster in the background that shows that she's became successful in her art, and she's mostly used Beetlejuice to do that. Which is very terrible.
She found her muse.
Yeah, it's awesome. So everyone gets a happy ending, and Charles, I mean, he's got scared, but at least he's still in his little his bird window doing his thing.
Yeah. We even got the football players who died who get to come back for the dance sequence at the end.
Yeah. Where's the bathroom? Give me a break.
I don't think we survived that crash, Coach.
Stop calling me Coach.
I think we survived that crash. Really, what was your first impression on that?
Okay, I believe you. Jump on the line.
That's great.
Yeah. So, I don't know. For the different experimental things that this movie went through, obviously Beetlejuice in the beginning of the script, and, they had to fine-tune it later, but he was going to be like an Arab with demon wings, and he was going to rape Lydia, and Lydia had a sister, and all those weird things that were not this movie. I'm so glad that they left those out, because, Michael Keaton, goddamn, what a performance.
I don't see where any of those things are weird that you're describing.
Yeah, me neither, man.
But no, part of the reason why you have those darker elements comes from the fact that the screenplay was partially written by Michael McDowell, who was a horror writer who had done a lot of different things, including writing for Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and then he also wrote a number of short horror novels and longer horror novels. Stephen King, as you can find on Wikipedia, Stephen King referred to him as the finest writer of paperback originals in America today. And he's written a bunch of other things besides just the horror genre, but McDowell was a very talented writer. He died at only 49 years old back in 1999, but he left behind a legacy that has endeared him to today for like a lot of what he's done. So it's sad that we lost him, but he passed away from basically from AIDS. He was a gay writer who, as many of us who know the history of AIDS and how it's affected the LGBT community in the 1980s during the Reagan administration. This is true horror when you think of it. This is the true horror of life. Is that when AIDS was becoming a problem in the 80s and early 90s, there was so much that was just ignored because it was thought of as a gay disease. And there's a lot of people who, when it hit and they didn't realize how bad it was, the science behind it, you have a lot of people who, if they were alive today, they could be receiving treatment for it and possibly be living longer, healthier lives. But at that time, a lot of people falling victim to it, and McDowell was one of the ones who did. But his horrific sense of style is clearly evident in some of the projects that he's worked on, Beetlejuice included.
Damn, AIDS, man. If only we had better science back then. It took away McDowell, Freddie Mercury, hell, even Eazy-E. So a lot of people missed and not forgotten.
Yeah, one of my, I wouldn't say favorite songwriters, but one who was really talented, who he's done a lot of like random stuff, including movie soundtracks. At the end of Ninja Turtles, that song 9.95?
Oh, yeah.
That was written by a man named Dan Hartman, whose bigger hits were, he had a solo hit called I Can Dream About You. So that's that song. I can dream about you if I can hold you tonight. And he also was the man who wrote and sang Free Ride for the Edgar Winter Band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the mountain is high, the valley is low. And you come on, take a free ride. That's him.
Free ride.
Yeah, that's the one. So,
Yeah.
very prominent and talented musician. He was also a producer. We lost him due to AIDS. So to lose somebody who was so connected to this film, even though obviously a lot of it had to be rewritten to tone it the fuck down. But yeah, Michael McDowell, wherever you are, thank you for your contributions to the literary and film communities. It has not gone unnoticed.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to finish that note. Come on and take a free ride.
Yeah, Dan Hartman. I could just do an entire episode just talking about the music he produced too, because he also wrote and produced "Living in America" for James Brown.
Oh, how living in America? Oh, we've covered that on the show before.
Yes, we covered it. We covered it in the Judge Dredd episode.
Oh my god! Of all the crossovers,
it ties back in together.
Oh my god damn it. God damn you, Webb.
Oh, I don't know how I did this.
You son of a bitch.
But seriously, he died of AIDS.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
My cousin, AIDS. My sister, AIDS. My brother, AIDS.
Just tie it back in really like such a horribly sharp turnaround. No, seriously, he died of AIDS.
AIDS, ma'am. AIDS.
But yeah, at least when we talk about these people, who have contributed to whether it be music or film, their memory should not go unheard, and that's part of what's so great about discussing things in details, to look at contributions like that. And well, if you want to talk about true horror, we said at the end how everybody had a happy ending, but actor Jeffrey Jones, who played the father Charles, he didn't have a very happy ending.
You mean in the context of the movie or in real life?
In real life.
Oh, I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, Jeffrey Jones was very famous for his work in the 80s. Besides being in Beetlejuice as Charles, he was also in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was in Amadeus as the Emperor. And he was also in other movies like House Guest. Everybody loves House Guest.
Oh, God. And he was also in that one movie we can't forget about, The Pest. John Leguizamo.
Yes, he was also in The Pest. He was also in Stay Tuned. He played the devil in that movie. And he was also in the wonderful Howard the Duck. He played Dr. Jennings.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he was arrested on child porn.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. See, there's another one of those turnarounds. It's like, yeah, he was in all those great, wonderful movies. He was arrested on child porn charges.
Well, I mean, nothing against Germans, but I could still watch The Pest because he's like a terrible German in that movie who hunts humans. So
Christ, man.
It's still okay, right?
I remember reading about this when it happened. He was arrested when I guess he was accused of having taken a 17-year-old boy, inviting him to his house, and taking nude photos of him. So it was voluntary, I guess, but 17 years old. But I think the kid he was photographing at the time was younger than that and only came out afterwards. So
yeah,
he's on the sex offender list for obvious reasons, and also frequently arrested, or I think twice more, because he moved his location, like he moved from one place to another and didn't update the sex offender registry.
You know how you like move your glasses out of the way and you start rubbing your eyelids and you're like, please, just nothing else. Like, could it be worse? I feel really, that sucks.
It does suck. I mean, it's one of those things where can you still look at somebody's work in the context of a film in general and enjoy the film? Yeah, because it's a team effort. So, like, I mean, is he still a fine actor for the film that he was in? Yeah. Do you want him babysitting your kids? No, you do not.
No. But, at the same time, the performance in this movie, his even included, the comedic timing of him and everyone else, it can't be pressed enough that, wherever they ended up as, some of them better than others, some careers better than others. Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, all different avenues of where they went. Some of them are even gone for a long time. Not too long after this movie, Winona Ryder did Edward Scissorhands, and then Girl Interrupted, and then after that, kind of displaced a little bit. Michael Keaton, the same thing after Batman Returns.
Unfortunately, they've all had a resurgence for them. Actually, all the main characters in this have had a resurgence. Catherine O'Hara, as I mentioned, popped up in Schitt's Creek, and she won an Emmy for that. And she was on the show for, I think it ran for 6 seasons. So that was good for her. Winona Ryder would come back after that weird shoplifting thing that happened in the early 2000s. She would come back and appear in Stranger Things and have her career reignited. And Michael Keaton obviously came back in a big way with Birdman.
I don't care what anyone says, he knew that he was making fun of his own career in that movie, or
Totally
some
did.
extent of it. Yeah, there's no way he didn't, and every time he's asked it, he always handled it in the perfect way of never admitting it. But it's what happened.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And Alec Baldwin, of course, would go on to have 30 Rock and then the continued impressions of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, man. They just recently, as of this recording, released one of him and Jim Carrey as Biden at the debates, the cold open.
Yeah, I have not seen that yet, but I do hear it is funny.
It's funny, but it's also, not too far from the truth. So, anyway.
Yeah, and then Gina Davis has had kind of an off and on career with things. She had a short-lived sitcom called The Gina Davis Show, and then she got really thrown under the bus when they tried doing that show Commander in Chief in 2005 about the first female president, and people were just picking that show apart like crazy. But she still maintained a career, being in a different show. She was in the series of The Exorcist back in 2016. But has she ever reached the heights that she was from back in the day? Not really, though she was in all 3 Stuart Little films, so I mean, that's something.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, the dog, we don't know. We never heard from him again. But everyone else did fine.
The dog, actually, fun fact, would later reappear in 1992's The Rocketeer.
Oh my God! All right. I knew you would have a fun factoid of that. That's why I brought it up.
Sadly, that's not true at all. I just made that up.
Oh, fuck you then. Son of a bitch. I was thinking about that movie. I was like, wait, when is there a dog in that movie? Because I've seen it so many times.
Why have you seen The Rocketeer so many times?
I fucking love that movie.
It's an odd movie to have such an attachment for.
I was an impressionable kid, all right?
I guess so. Who grows up Mommy, Daddy, can we go to the store and rent The Rocketeer? No, son. That movie's shit.
Who doesn't like jetpacks? Come on.
That'll be a future episode we're going to have to cover sometime. We'll discuss The Rocketeer.
Yes. Any strong, red-blooded American taking down the Nazis, hell yeah. Give me that movie. I'll take it every time.
That movie was directed by Joe Johnston, who we would never hear from again outside of films like Jurassic Park 3, Jumanji, Captain America: The First Adventure. Just films nobody's ever heard of, really.
Yeah. I think I've vaguely heard of those. Seen them once, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, he was also... he also directed the live-action sequences of The Page Master and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Wow.
It's actually a pretty diverse catalog. Joe Johnston, from The Rocketeer. Completely off the subject of Beetlejuice at this point in time. Never talk about the Rocketeer-related things.
Fucking 30 minutes off of Beetlejuice at this point.
Well, we followed up on the actors. I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, I think we did a good job of this one. Not to pat myself on or your back. I'd like to hear thoughts on Beetlejuice because I still feel like this is a movie that a lot of people know about. A lot of people have maybe seen scenes on YouTube, but they've actually never sat down and watched the movie. And if you have, you maybe not have enjoyed it. I mean, it's very unclear what the ultimate voice of this is because there's not many voices talking about it often. It's just a weird movie, but it's such a good weird movie.
Here's one thing to end on. I distinctly remember, I don't know why, it's the only scene I so clearly and vividly remember from the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to test you to see if you remember this. There's one
man.
episode where one of the antagonists is trying to dare Beetlejuice to say a phrase that if he says it, will come true to the point where he should be able to defeat Beetlejuice. Do you remember what that phrase is?
I don't remember that one.
He was trying to get Beetlejuice to say, "I'm coming apart at the seams." That way his body would, fall apart.
I think I've seen it, but I didn't remember it, yeah.
And I don't know why I remember that so much, but that is one thing from Beetlejuice I clearly remember.
Yeah, it's a good aesthetic, but overall I didn't like that show.
Well, we want to know what you thought about things. How'd you feel about Beetlejuice? How'd you feel about the musical, the TV series, or cartoon, I should say? Let us know in the comments section. The Crypt of the Unknown is now available on a lot of different places. We've got this uploaded to Spotify. We have it on Apple Podcasts. Obviously, it's here on YouTube, Castbox, FM. There's a lot of places to find it. And we do want to hear your thoughts on what we want to cover next. If you have something that you feel would be interesting, let us know. Leave it in the comments section, or you can email me at thecriticalandroid@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at criticalandroid. Stefan JD, how can they find you, sir?
I'm on Instagram at Cyberpunk Holiday, so just come say hi. Other than that, I got a photo shoot with GQ right now, so I gotta go.
So from all of us to all of you, thank you so much again for listening. Obviously, this is one crypt that we insist that you keep open because there's a lot of fun to be had with it. But for now, the crypt is closed.
Close.